Warning: the following podcast contains adult language and childish comedy. Listener discretion is advised. And now, please adjust your headphone volume to an unreasonable level and enjoy the most dynamic and electrifyingly entertaining podcast ever to conquer cyberspace. This is
Amish Baby Machine.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the most powerful podcast ever created, the Amish Baby Machine Pop Culture Podcast, starring me, Dags. Today, before we get into the show, I want you to make sure you help us out. Check out our merch, AmishBabyMachine.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at AmishBMachine. Follow us on Instagram, like our Facebook page, and whatever you use to listen to our podcast, make sure you leave a review. A 5-star review is the best review, and it will unlock the secrets to the universe. Also, a great way to support this podcast is through Patreon, patreon.com. Links also on AmishBabyMachine.com. And now, prepare yourself for the most powerful retro collective ever created, NitroWave TC. Tonight we have powerful members, Unholy Rat King and North Innsbruck. Welcome to the Amish Baby Machine Pop Culture Podcast.
Hey, it's the Unholy Rat King. Hey, this is North Innsbruck representing NitroWave TC tonight. Good to be here.
Powerful. I'm getting deja vu for some reason. Powerful.
I don't know what's going on. Whoa.
Now, you guys are a powerful retro collective of Retrowave, Synthwave. Tell the fans a flock of Amish. What is Synthwave? What is Retrowave?
So a lot of it is like Synthwave has to do with, kind of throwback to the 80s synthesizer soundtracks, your John Carpenters, there we go, stuff like that. And, Retrowave. So kind of like the majority of the artists, really what we're doing is doing something retro, be it video game type music, movie score type music. Basically, what so many of us are doing right now is we're digging back into the sounds, the synthesizers, the different tools, the timbres that you remember hearing that you're growing up with, and we're using those to build melodies, bass lines, really orchestras of sorts, depending on the artist and musician. And it's turning out to create some pretty awesome sounding stuff, to say the least.
Did you enjoy my intro? I did that on the phone.
We were both sitting here in awe as it started playing. It was awesome.
God bless.
Hey, we're going to recruit you pretty quick.
But to tell you the truth, that was digital. You guys need to be analog, correct?
Hey, we'll take it anyway it's coming. I'll tell you. Digital, analog.
Yes. Tell us, what's the difference between analog and digital music when it comes to synthesizers?
Excellent. You've got. Well, actually, I'll kind of take the analog piece if you want to. Yeah, that King will step on the digital. As far as analog goes, really what we're talking about here, these are a lot of the old synthesizers that you're used to hearing that came up like earlier. Rat King was talking about John Carpenter, for example. These are those old keyboards that are full of microchips where you press the computer and that electrical signal is actually turned into a sound through a series of processes. Pretty amazing, these voices, the different things that people were able to do simply by bending electricity and pushing it through a speaker. Really something. And that's kind of a real brief description of the analog side. What about the digital side, though, King? Digital has a lot more to do with, I don't even know what's the difference between the digital side. Computers, like we're kind of like the DSP, maybe some of the software side of it as well that people have got going on. Right now, that's something I haven't really taken much of a dive into myself, but there's a whole other side of synthesis going on where we're able to emulate a lot of these old sounds through computers. And so by doing that, we're able to match a lot of the sounds, not, depending on, there's some opinion there, I guess, from one side to the other. I would say the sounds get pretty darn close, if not almost exact, to the analog. But there are people out there who say that the analog signal coming from the old microchips really builds kind of a warmer, a bit more full sound that people are drawn back to.
So it's kind of like the argument digital music versus analog vinyl records.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of it. I mean, I remember people saying how tapes and records were different, from one another, or CDs. And there's all these different types of sound qualities. And it really depends on, maybe to a certain degree as an artist, what it is that you're looking for, what you want to achieve with the sound.
Well, it reminds me of art too, drawing. Like if you want to, some people get into photorealism, but you reach a point where why don't you just do a Xerox copy of it versus the artist's interpretation of it. It doesn't have to look exactly like it, but it's your feeling of what you saw and you expressed it, that way through music versus just, like you were saying, digitally perfect the sound of the analog system. So sometimes, even though it's not perfect, it has that quality that the artist breathes into it, not just some, carbon copy of it.
Right, exactly. And a lot of it too is like, some people use, strictly computers. They don't even use any outboard or analog synthesizers themselves. Some people do a combination. They do some synthesizers and some just straight VSTs or programs that they're using. So you kind of get a lot of different people that are, they come from they're using a bunch of different tools to make this stuff.
We talk about music, creating the music and making it sound exact, but what do you think of the imperfections, like the glitches? I mean, doesn't that give the music some soul? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so here's an interesting story that comes along with that. Over the last year since, August 2018, I started working with a Swedish producer. He goes by the name of Magnavolt, and we're working together. Now, all of my equipment that I've had and worked with up to this point is that old analog stuff again. So I've got the 1/4-inch instrument cables going into it. Now, everything that Magnavolt was working on was the VST, so these computer applications. And so I was sending music his way to work on, to edit, to piece together to become a song. One thing that I realized as I was sending this music off to him was that there were things like background static sometimes, or small snaps or crackles, different kind of artifacts that were left in those tracks as a result of having analog equipment. Now, to me, I thought that those imperfections were, I guess, a bad thing. But what was really fascinating was the flip side of it. Now, working with somebody who's used to all digital, they only ever received completely clean sounds. And so as I pushed those files over to him, as opposed to him saying, yeah, you got to do something about that buzz or that snap that I hear in this track, his flip take was, wow, that's not even possible with the equipment that I'm using. And I have to add that artificially later if I want that to sound in that way in a certain song. And so, again, it's almost like you said a minute ago, like, digital versus vinyl record. They have different qualities. And so what is it that you're looking for as a listener to a certain degree, or an artist?
It also reminds me of Max Headroom. He had those powerful glitches in the video.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yes. Adds a lot of life.
No, and also, yeah, it's the whole holistic thing. Like it's kind of like booze. If you drink a beer that's naturally fermented versus distilling just the alcohol out of it, you're taking a lot of the soul out. So it is kind of cool to have all that, like you're saying, the glitches, the buzzes, the feedback. It kind of enriches the music.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the things that I can say Rat King does that is really unique is with his setup. And I kind of give you a second to explain what you're doing. That's even a bit more, kind of different out there than what we've even talked about up to this point.
I have the Game Boys, and one of them I put in like a backlight, and then I kind of screwed it up, so the screen's broken, which sucks. But it turns green and it lights up, so that's cool. But then the other one I took and I basically circuit bent in a potentiometer so I can change the clock speed on it. So if you have something that you've recorded, there's a program called LSDJ for making like chiptune and Game Boy music. you can, change the speed of the song on the fly, or if you put you can put Tetris right in there and, turn on Tetris and press play, and then you can speed it up or slow it down. So it's pretty interesting. I guess pretty glitchy and noisy.
Now explain to us chiptune. Is that the same as 8-bit?
Yeah, there's a lot of different stuff. Like I know some people strictly use LSDJ and like the Game Boy and like 8-bit. Some people go like your 16-bit type systems. I know that there's I haven't played with them at all, but there's certain things where you can, I think it's called like a Super Nintendo or something like that. It's something interesting. Yeah, so you can like basically plug a cart into like your Super Nintendo and make music that way. So there's a lot of different stuff, and that you can also find like just trackers, which I haven't messed with either. But that's kind of that same line. It's just a program that tries to emulate that type of sound.
Now I don't know if you guys know, but I am a pioneer in Amish Wave and Amish Core. One of my
wait a minute.
Yeah, this is true. And one of my powerful songs in Amish Core was back that buggy up. Very popular.
It sounds like a banger.
Oh, it was sick, dude. So tell me, we talked about Retrowave, we talked about Synthwave. What is Darkwave?
Yeah, Darkwave is, I kind of think about all these different waves as a bit of a Venn diagram where all these different genres are laying over one another. It's something that I've personally, I guess, North Innsbruck, I've been listening to a little. It's something that's a bit newer to me, I guess, but it's really taking a lot of these elements that we hear from these old synthesizers and cranking it up to 11. Yeah. You saw it coming, right? Yeah, exactly. No, that's it. Using some of these dirty sounds, these bigger sounds, the grinding gears, the sparks, some of these less friendly tones, perhaps is a way to put it. So it's almost like if you could say a dark metal twist on the whole synthwave genre. It's pretty rad stuff they're doing right now.
So that's where industrial would come into your diagram?
I would give it its own little corner right there and kind of connect Darkwave between industrial, I suppose, and some sort of goth genre. I'm sure, you could a few other things in there, but I would put it right down in the same corner of the page without a doubt.
Awesome. So I want to know what were your influences? Who do you like? Who are your synth gods? And I know influences can be broad, all a bunch of different genres of music, but what are some bands or groups or people that influenced you guys?
You want to go first? Or?
Journey.
There we go, right?
I can't hear the opening of Worlds Apart without just getting emotional when that, what is he playing in that? I think it's a Juno.
Oh, it's got to be Juno 106.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And he's like got it up on the wall in the video.
Yeah.
So yeah, that sound, like when a synthesizer can just hit you right in the stomach when it starts out like that, that's one of the greatest feelings. Also, Vangelis. I mean, I can't go wrong. If I could get a CS80, then it was.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, Yamahas, those are gorgeous.
Do you guys remember? Do you guys remember the original video of Vangelis when Chariots of Fire?
That's so cool. It's honestly, this is epic stuff that we're talking about. It's some of these sounds again. It's like the doors of heaven have opened. I don't even know how else to put it. It's powerful. It's different.
It is powerful because I remember in the original video, he's got a cigarette and the smoke is just wafting. And then you hear the yeah, that's awesome. I'm sorry, I interrupted your powerful flow. Keep talking about your influences.
No, feeling it there. No, I guess kind of the one thing that I wanted to add to that whole piece was really getting excited was, these electronic instruments. This is something that's uniquely ours, without a doubt. Not us as a genre of music by any stretch of the imagination, but as globally, these are new instruments, and what's vintage isn't really necessarily that old. 30 to 40 years, and so this is some stuff that's really fresh that hasn't been played with or touched a whole lot up to this point. So we get to do some cool stuff, like with what Rat King's doing right now with the Game Boys, and really pushing the envelope as to what we've traditionally heard as, you know, video game music or chiptune.
Now, that's funny you said that, because that reminds me of hip hop, where hip hop is not just rap. It's about the breakdancing, it's about the graffiti art. So yours is about the whole experience. It's about, you're taking Game Boys and tweaking them. You're doing, so I noticed on the artwork, tell us about the artwork. I'm getting a Miami Vice vibe every time I see like different, so I see the purples and the pinks and the triangles and the grids for the graphics. What can you say about that?
So we kind of wanted to tie in to a lot of those 80s themes that you see with a lot of Synthwave artists and stuff. But what we really wanted to do is, like, a lot of them you see like a fast car or palm trees and stuff like that. But we wanted to kind of bring it back to, we're a group that's in Minnesota, so we wanted to bring like the speedboat, like the 80s cigarette speedboat, and then like the pine trees. So we still wanted to kind of be in that vein, but make it distinctly Minnesotan at the same time.
Yeah, totally.
I said, how about our total shitty winners too?
We tried to avoid that in the image. That'll be the winter lineup. No, and that's one thing, just to build on what Rat King's saying here is, and to what you're mentioning here. So these video games, these sounds, these old synthesizers, we're trying to do something beyond making music. We're building a culture of sorts, and we're reconnecting not just with ourselves, but with one another within the community itself. And it's something that's bringing us together very, very quickly and making us actually really close friends. At the same time, what we're seeing is that other people are wanting to be a part of this and that are drawn in. And that's what we really want to do. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And we know by working together and pursuing these common goals and doing something we love, this is going to work. And it's really exciting.
So are you more of a cult or a gang?
Kind of Amish. It's a good crew. We've had 4 meetings. We've lined up 3 to 4 different gigs. All of us have like previously built social media presence as well. So we're bringing individual following as musicians and unique aspects to what we do. So it's pretty cool. It's a diverse network. I mean, even graphic artists. We're trying to connect with some filmmakers as well. So, hey there, anybody listening, reach out to NitroWave. Let's figure out something cool to do. You know what I mean, though? Special.
Yeah, and I'm thinking the main reason you did it was for the groupies, right?
Well, I'm getting a little old for that now. That just sounds like a lot of work. We did it. Here's the deal. It all starts because we all hang out in our basements by ourselves and ran out of friends. So we're just figuring out how to talk to one another first.
Basements are powerful. A lot of gets done in the basement.
It really does. It can accomplish some real dreams down there. No, irony aside, it's amazing how many people throughout the world we've both connected with through that type of, internet, computer, whatever you want to call it, connection to the outside world. It's how we met.
And how about, when is Disney going to buy you guys? That's what I want to know.
We'll turn this one over to Rat King here.
We have to, first we need to make all the rights to our entire collective / cult. So,
I hear they pay well, at least. So we'll cash out. You can come hang out any time at the cabin after that.
So I want to know about music and movies, music soundtracks. What are some movies that are epic, powerful soundtracks in your powerful opinions?
Ooh. Terminator, for one, like when that opens up and you just get that that sound. That was actually when I found Synthwave, the artist Perturbator had used a quote from the movie Terminator in one of his tracks. And that was what actually drew me to coming back and listening. I kind of listened to mostly heavy metal growing up, and some heavy metal that like had included synthesizers. So stuff like that always kind of brought me back. But hearing Terminator and being like, oh man, that movie has an amazing soundtrack. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of stepping in there too a little bit. You definitely, as far as me within North Innsbruck, the whole piece of it was really using a cinematic Retrowave connection to it from the beginning. And so one of the things that I did when I was really working on the project initially was I did some research into figuring out what were some of these soundtracks that I was really into, that I really liked. And a key piece that Rat King had mentioned just a little bit ago was John Carpenter. And so figuring out what were some of these old instruments that John Carpenter used, some of these other great soundtracks, and, not necessarily even in individuals that stand out, but I remember the soundtrack for it was an 80s slasher film called Chopping Mall that has an insanely cool soundtrack. It's all done on synthesizers, but it's got this like arpeggioed kind of Jamaican synth type of a feel to it. So it was just a really cool, unique sound. And so really kind of digging through these different movies, different soundtracks. Even Jaws, seriously, it's cool stuff. I could talk all night. I better slow down on that.
No, go ahead.
Now.
That's why we're here. We're here to talk.
Yeah, I suppose that's the point of this, right?
Yes.
So, without a doubt, even, for people who are listeners and trying to figure out what is it that I would be interested in checking out, some of the work that certain record labels are doing right now, like Waxwork Records or Death Waltz Records as well, are doing some beautiful soundtrack work and going back and finding the original reels, the original tapes, and re-recording and repressing them and coming up with some gorgeous presses on vinyl, different colors, and redoing the artwork as well for these. And so one thing that I think is happening that's had a huge influence on my music, going beyond the individual directors, is almost a resurgence of retro horror cinema. It's almost like a renaissance period right now, it feels like, with the creation and the pressing, the rediscovery of these old soundtracks. For example, some of the stuff I've come across more recently that I got pretty excited about. I'm close to drawing a blank here at the moment, of course. Something more recent, even. Let's go there. The soundtrack for Us is just amazing. It's so dark, so well written. Going into some of the earlier stuff outside of John Carpenter, Friday the 13th again, some of these key pieces of it, even, what did they do with Nightmare on Elm Street? Some of this stuff, like the 1-2 Freddy's Coming for You, this stuff really hits you and sticks with you. And looking at that, instrument-wise, going back to the deep pads, these different synth sounds that people really, I don't know, for me, it's an emotional connection. I don't know how else to put it. It's a deep sound that kind of rattles your bones, and it's something that when you add it right to the recipe, creates some truly beautiful things. And so experimentation, visualization.
No, that's cool. How do they do that? Like John Carpenter, that bell sound where it goes, choo. They always.
Oh my gosh. That is a great question. There's got to be some sort of a detuning that he's using on one of his synths.
Okay, that makes sense.
Kind of just drop it down. Yeah, that maybe I was going to say changing some sort of oscillator, but it's got to be as easy. Well, I say easy, but never is on most synths. Seriously, buttons and knobs everywhere, which is also fun.
Because that reminds me of Gary Newman. I'm a huge Gary Newman fan, and
yes,
I was lucky enough to meet him one time in downtown Minneapolis before a show. Him and his band were actually at a bar, so I just went up to him and bugged him. But it was pretty epic. So I'm big into that. I got to see Kraftwerk. I love Kraftwerk. So I love the old synth. I like the new stuff. What do you guys think of more of the pop stuff? Did you like any of the pop new wave synth?
Personally, it really depends, because I always listen to like dark, heavy metal and stuff like that. Like I always have really enjoyed like the darker, heavier synth type music. So it has to be like, I think for me, a lot of it is like music that's from 80s movies. Like if it's from a movie or TV show, and it's like the poppier stuff, that's the kind of stuff. So I have a harder time with like the newer poppy, new wave type stuff because I don't have anything to relate it to. Whereas if it was a backing track in a movie or something, I have that, so it brings that nostalgia back for me. Whereas some of the newer stuff, it's like harder for me personally. No, I kind of agree.
How about Lamal from Kajagoogoo, Never Ending Story? So that you can't get sweeter than that, but you got to admit that's a catchy tune.
I think that's part of the difference there is like, I love that in the same way I love the soundtrack to like Ninja Gaiden. It takes me to a certain place in a certain time. Like, I grew up with that movie. I mean, I remember, my dad coming home from the video store on a Saturday, and we probably watched it 2 or 3 times, and I didn't even know what it was. But going back to that specific kind of connection that you're talking about is part of what it was all about. Like, I was in the studio today is Monday, so it would have been Saturday night, and this track that I was working on slowly started to come together. And as it did, I can't necessarily like it to anything like synesthesia where I see colors, but I can sense certain types of memories or things that start to get drawn from the different sounds as they're coming together. And I know when that happens that I'm doing what I need to be doing. And it's not always easy. And sometimes it goes multiple songs without that occurring. And so that's kind of part of that high as a retrowave musician that I really chase, is that moment in the studio when these different timbres and sounds cross one another, and it gives me that feeling again, like I was watching Never Ending Story in my basement as a kid. You know what I mean? Big stuff.
Now, let me ask you about performance, because you guys are big about performing your music, not just creating it. So how do you take that passion, those sounds, and what do you do? Do you combine it with light? Do you combine it with images? Do you have ambient video going, or what? Explain to me, flesh out for the listeners what the experience would be like if they went to one of your shows.
Yeah. So what I do is a very different experience from Rat King. We're on the same tree without a doubt. But I'm going to turn it over to him to give you an idea what his performance is, and then I can kind of take it again from there.
So for what I do, I've really only played the one live show last year down at Atlanta. There was my friend James, who runs Echo Synthetic, was doing the second year of his Synth festival, and I was already on my way, and some musicians had to drop off. So I had told him I would jump on, and I had about a week's notice. So I kind of got as much gear as I could muster and stuff into 2 backpacks and went down there. I borrowed one of my buddies, Gregorio Franco, the dark synth musician down there. He had a couple of strobe lights that were sound activated. So basically I tried to put on as heavy of a show, and I used to do vocals in like a metal hardcore band. So try to take that kind of aspect, and just as long as I was doing something, I had a synth that is similar to, it's called a pocket operator. It's small like a calculator, but it has more of those like arcade video game type sounds. I really wanted to do a lot of playing that so I could run around and kind of keep things more interesting than just kind of standing there behind a synth hitting some keys. So as long as there was some sort of visual aspect to it, I know I'd like to work in some more videos. We've been looking at projectors and things for the future, and stuff like that. Yeah, so it really is kind of like he's saying, like we're trying to build on the experience more than anything else right now. Live shows, I've been in a number of bands over the years as far as performing as a retrowave musician. I've been doing a lot of work actually online through Instagram
and doing different videos, small shows like that, more or less out of my basement. What we're doing with NitroWave TC is we're actually going to step it into the real world here. And so we've been rehearsing, we've been building up for a while. So like, for example, the different bars, clubs, Amsterdam bars coming up. We've got Can Wonderland coming in December. Rat King and I are playing December, 4th at Bearly Brothers Records in the back of the record store. The next weekend, the 11th of October, we're playing at the Hexagon, opening for Nick Vivid. So basically what we've been doing, like I said, is we've been rehearsing, we've been working, and we're making this transition now from basement studio musicians with a decent catalog and an actual bit of a following into our world, into our real physical world. And it's a little bit scary. It's something that's new and different, but on the same hand, with the show, we can do stuff like Rat King's talking about here. High energy, powerful, aggressive sets. What I'm going to be doing as well, he mentioned the projector. And so with that, I've been working with an artist out of Austin, Texas, and he's doing some background videos for me right now, some branded stuff, kind of the vector grid, kind of retro futuristic stuff. And, because I'm from up north, of course, he gave me like these cool snowflake effects with the band name North Innsbruck behind it that I'll be inserting in between different types of video clips. So I'll have that playing through the projector, certainly traditional lighting as well. But it's going to be a different experience because in a contrast to what Rat King does on the aggressive side, I could say I kind of on the flip side. My music is, like I said, a bit more cinematic, a bit more dreamy in a sense. It's retrowave through and through with that softer side, I guess.
So more sweeping synth versus the.
Yeah, totally. I'm using a lot of sawtooth sound waves, and so I like to draw them out almost like you hear a guitar played. A lot of string sounds, a lot of brass sounds, trumpet sounds at times as well, and they don't necessarily sound like the trumpet we're used to because some of this comes from the old gear versus what Rat King's got, creating his sound. And again, you got to explain that, dudes.
Yeah, I don't. The Game Boys are the oldest piece of equipment that I have. I don't. I have a Arteria Microbrute, which is a small semi analog, but I wanted to get into modular synthesizers eventually, so it has points where you can patch out into a modular synthesizer. So my other synth that I wrote the majority of my new album on is called the Erica Synth Pico System. So it's like 13 smaller modules that are all hooked up into one little case versus trying to put together a bunch of individual pieces. It all came together and has drums and sequencer and filters. So you can still get some of those sounds, but I just like the way a synthesizer sounds. Like, it doesn't necessarily, like, for me, I don't care that it's not, specifically from the 80s. So I just like the way that the synthesizer sound and that you can still kind of fit that vein, but it's something brand new. And, I like a lot of drum beats, so I try to keep my stuff pretty like drum heavy and, almost like going to the club, type stuff, just like that really pulsating kick drum and stuff, just to, keep you dancing.
So let me ask you then, that reminds me of EDM. How is your music different from, let's say, today's EDM?
I honestly have like the hardest time classifying my music specifically. And it actually comes from what like a Rat King is. So like a Rat King is a bunch of rats that are all stuck together by the tail. So I kind of wanted to use that idea when it came to making music. So, putting some aspects of more like EDM, chiptune, hip hop. I think most specifically is I lean pretty heavily on like the video game sounds. So even with like my modular synth, I'm not using a Game Boy and LSDJ, but I'm using, kind of a sine wave that's kind of got that chiptune sound. So it's kind of, as long as I can kind of tie it back to, because I played a lot of video games growing up, is kind of that video game music sound, but in like what different aspects can I use to make it, different genres that still kind of fit that.
So in the synthwave business, is there a lot of cool beefs like there is in hip hop?
I think it really depends. This is a good question. It depends on the artist and the style. From what I do with synthwave, my brand of it, I guess, the Dream Wave, it's pretty mellow. It's very light on the drums. It's a lot of 4 beats per measure. It's not terribly complicated, but I've got an alternate project that's going on right now. It's a Darkwave group called Local Creeps that I've got going with these other one other guy from NitroWave TC, Eric. He's a classically trained percussionist, and so what I'm getting to do is I'm getting to bring these elements, these leads that I've developed, as well as some of these pads and backgrounds, so these aggressive, nasty, fast drum beats that just do something completely different than what I've ever considered doing. And it's a hell of a lot of fun, for lack of better words. It's a blast. And we're going to do something really cool visually with that as well. Definitely pulling some of that horror cinema aspect. We'll see what it looks like. I would love to bring in some corpse paint from the Norwegian black metal, but maybe there's something else out there for us.
This is great stuff, guys. And we're trapped in the 80s here. So we love that on the Amish Baby Machine Pop Culture Podcast. Love synth, love movies. So this is cool how you're bringing everything together. You're bringing the artwork, the music, the feel. You're bringing vibes from, like you said, other projects. And we really appreciate you coming into the barn today.
This was so much fun today. Really appreciate the invitation as well. Hopefully let's stay connected more in the future. We're going to have a ton of cool stuff going on, and would definitely like to touch base more, without a doubt.
No, this is awesome. And what I want you to do right now is tell the kids, a flock of Amish, tell them about all your projects, where they can, I want you to plug everything, tell them where they can get a hold of you, where you're going to be performing.
Awesome. Sounds good. Do you want to get us started, Rat King?
Yeah, so like North Innsbruck had said, our first show we've got is at Barely Brothers Records over in St. Paul on October 4th from 7 to 9 p.m.
So if you haven't been to Barely Brothers, it's a wicked awesome small record shop in St. Paul, Minnesota, just off of Highway 280 and University. Again, 7 to 9, October 4th. And then what else we got again?
Look it up. Yeah, we're starting to get a big list going. We've got October 11th.
Yes, October 11th at the Hex.
Yep. So that's with Nick Vivid. He's from New York. He reached out to a couple of us individually, and we were like, well, we all know each other. And so we started reaching out to our group, and we're like, who can play this show?
Yep.
So it was funny that he had kind of reached out to a couple of different artists, knowing that, we were from Minnesota, to find that we all knew each other and were trying to make stuff happen so that he could get a, good group of people going. Right now, I'm playing that show. North Innsbruck is playing that show.
Yep.
And then I don't know.
I think what we're going to have on top of that is we're also going to be pulling some DJs in. And so Kyle from the Two Poor Bastards podcast, who's really a key piece of all of this. He's also a synthwave maestro of sorts. He really is like our connoisseur of cool within our organization. So he's going to be doing DJ sets in between the live performances, just to keep feeding people some of the music that we're doing here in the Twin Cities with NitroWave TC, but also what's happening nationally, what's happening internationally. We've got friends all over the place. So that's happening too. Other shows, just the live stuff, Amsterdam over in St. Paul. I got that listed as November 9th. So there we're going to have a couple, actually a few, I should say, live acts. We're going to have Night Audit there, who's going to be stepping up. D Notive, a very, very well-known local person on the international scale, is performing at that set as well. It's actually going to be a record release for him if things go well. And then we also have the big one. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So when we first met, we met at Can Wonderland when the majority of us finally got to come meet in person. We'd really only interacted on social media. So that's going to be December 4th. Yep, December 4th. We kind of wanted to put together a bigger show with as many of us as possible. So we've got Galaxy 80s, who's on Prime Slaves Records, Denotive again. Both of us are playing. Night Audit is playing that one as well, and Bad and Rad is playing that as well. So that one's going to be a little bit longer. We're going to be in there's a backstage area. It's got some really cool art. They did a lot. I don't know what they've got back there, but it's a lot of neon art that they've made back in this little area that they have their stage. So it was pretty cool to come see. I know that they've got mini golf and arcade games and stuff there too. So it's a pretty cool place. Pretty excited for that one to happen, and then
absolutely
starting to look into 2020.
In fact, even 2020, the dates aren't necessarily locked in yet. But whatever the new name is for the Nomad Bar in Minneapolis, we're looking at that in January, February. The Uptown VFW, we're in contact with as well. So we've got some people looking out there in the future as far as live shows. Now, and when it comes to just releases, music, I mean, Rat King and myself, you can definitely find us both with the Google search. But speaking for myself, you can find North Innsbruck on Bandcamp. Please, listeners, go to Bandcamp, check out North Innsbruck. If you can afford goodwill donations for music, it will be accepted with open arms. But otherwise, seriously, I'm on iTunes, so if that's more your thing, if you go to the Apple Store, whatever it is, I'm pretty much anywhere with North Innsbruck through my distributor at this point. So please check it out. How about for you, Rat King? Where can they find you at?
Same thing. Looking up Unholy Rat King on Bandcamp. I always push Spotify a lot. I know people can't always afford to buy music, but go stream it. It's a lot of fun. I do that a lot myself. I'll pick up music when I can afford it, and then I'll go listen to it on Spotify. That's just looking us up on the internet is the easiest way. Anywhere you can find our music is going to be picked up.
Totally it. And so that's kind of the plug for the two of us. But on top of it all, the bigger picture is NitroWave TC. And I think, that's really why a big chunk of why we're here today. Yeah, we want to definitely get a little plug out for ourselves. But what we're doing together right now, building this culture, this Retrowave community here in the Twin Cities is what it's all about. We know that we can have an awesome strategy. We can work our butts off to try and do everything perfectly. But if we don't have a culture, if we don't have people into what it is that we're doing, it doesn't matter. It's not going to have an impact. And so we're thinking bigger than that. We're dreaming bigger because we know even some of those smaller goals, we're going to be able to reach those. So let's push ourselves. Let's see what more we can do. And in the process, we're going to grow. In the process, people are going to find us, and we're going to do some really cool stuff here in the Twin Cities and hopefully beyond in the region. I don't know, maybe the nation. We'll see.
Great job tonight. It was powerful. We got to hear all about Synthwave, Retrowave, Darkwave. And we're going to be hearing more about you guys. We know that. Thanks for coming down to the virtual barn.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time, guys.
Thank you again.
Thanks for
Take care.
And as always, thanks for listening to this powerful podcast. And until next time, you've just enjoyed the Amish Baby Machine Pop Culture Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Amish Baby Machine Pop Culture Podcast. It is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and everywhere else fine podcasts are found. Please support our podcast through Patreon and shop our merch at AmishBabyMachine.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. This has been an Amish Baby Machine production.